says we're recording now.
Yeah, I'm gonna turn mine on. I just turned it on.
Biggest thing to be concerned about this time of year
Yes, that's
is the darkness. What time is it? 4:29.
Almost there.
Hello, how are you?
Did you scan that already?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's in your email.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. So, oh yeah.
Dave here.
Who's that?
Yeah, he's here. Dave's here.
Yeah, he's here.
Thank you.
Matt, who we invite? Matt, who we inviting to closed session?
Abe, myself, BJ, Michael Longbow, Jay, Courtney.
Okay, everyone, I've got 4:30. Start the public hearing. We have a presentation by Matthew Munslinger and Abe Gray.
All right. What this is about is when we decided to go forth with this GAC project, we had to find a way to fund it. And at that time, it was decided to do increases every 6 months with a smaller increase in July when we were looking at increasing the other utilities, and then followed by a larger increase January 1st. It was just a water rate. So we're looking at 7.5% increase, 60% on the usage charge, 40% on the customer charge, which would equate to roughly $3 a month on the average residential user. It also includes revisions to our schedule of fees at the same time to clean up a few items and then also reflect the water usage or water rate changes as well. So, is there anything you would like to add, Abe?
How much covers it? Main drivers, that's of course. Of course, the main drivers, like Matt mentioned, for this rate increase of the new GAC facility, as well as losing our major customer recently, as well as just regular inflationary expenses. The goal of this was to kind of build up 53% new revenue over 5 years, and after this increase, we'll be about 4/10 of the way through that process. Like Matt said, the effect on our average residential customer is about $3 a month, about $2 on the customer charge, about $1 on their consumption charge.
Cool.
All the news that I have about it.
Okay. And will you break that down again for me, Abe? The amount that's attributed to the GAC versus inflation versus raws.
I'm going off memory.
Yep,
I should
I
refresh
understand
myself.
that.
I believe 60% of the total increase. So 60% of the 53% increase, about a little over 60% of that is due to the GAC facility.
Okay.
I believe about half each on the losing Rawls County, and then the inflationary expenses over 5 years.
Okay.
I'll check my numbers on the back of my spreadsheets, but it was something on that order of magnitude.
Okay. Cool.
I should know better.
No, I mean, hey, ballparks are good. Thank you.
Yep.
It appears our water rates are, water production's going up.
Yeah, we've had some compensating increase in usage to kind of offset part of the Rawls
So
County.
3.6 million per day.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's something will take an effect as we get into the latter years of this, this rate increase schedule that we have. Is we'll have to look at how numbers are driving compared to what we projected back when we started this, so.
Did you hear Ross County has a leak?
I did not hear that.
Yeah, I believe we discussed last month, kind of reassessing things towards the end of this 5-year process, where we come in with actual, carbon costs and different things like that. Hopefully, we can taper off some of these extra increases. But we thought it was prudent to continue the course as lined out with the cost of service study from a year and a half ago.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, Abe.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public regarding the presentation?
I'll step up.
Okay, Mr. Dobson?
Again, I'm Mike Dobson. I live in the second ward. I represent the second ward on the city council. I brought my bill here today. I spoke to you 6 months ago at the last water rate increase. For water, electric, and sewer, my base pay before I turn on the water, before I get a kilowatt of energy, or before I flush the toilet, my bill's $48.25. Your proposed increase is another $2, making, before you use anything at all, you're going to pay more than $50. We've got a lot of fixed income people and lower income people in town that, can't afford that. They're, choosing between, turning the heat on and food and prescriptions. Looking at your report, you've got 1,751 delinquencies. That's high. 109 that have been turned over for disconnection for non-payment. That extra $2 fixed cost isn't going to help. I would urge you all to, put more of an emphasis on the usage charge than on that fixed charge. Looking at the water department, if I'm reading Abe's report wrong, you're at 106% of your cash reserves at $3.7 million. I know your goal is 125%. I know you've got, GAC coming online, but, I'd urge you to, look at the fixed, or, not use the fixed cost and use the cost that's actually going through the faucet. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Anyone else? Melissa? Yeah.
No,
Okay,
I think he said it perfectly.
okay. Abe, would you have any comment on that, what Mr. Dobson said?
Just a couple quick points of feedback. Appreciate the councilman coming and sharing his thoughts with us, of course. Those cash reserve targets will be increasing significantly when the full debt service commences on the GAC, and the debt service and operating expenses commence on that. So you won't see a significant, actual cash reserves in excess of the minimum targets there. And the debate between consumption charge and fixed charge goes back as long as there's been utilities. It's what we've tried to do is have our business modeled by the cost of service study consultants. They came up with the 60%, so the majority is going on the gallon charge, majority of the new revenue. But we definitely, of course, understand that many people have financial hardships, and we're trying to be cognizant of that, and trying to maintain a viable business at the same time.
I know there's nothing we can do tonight about it, but maybe in the future we could look at that and see what can be done.
We've discussed a few options of the base charge, including a first so many gallons and kilowatt hours, consumption, that kind of thing. I believe there's going to be, kind of a revisiting of that in the near future.
That 1,700 delinquent is consistent every month. It's I've never seen it lower than 1,700 since I've been on this board. So, I don't know if that's due to mostly electricity or.
Electricity would be is the primary driver of that.
That's the driver.
The higher dollar part of everybody's bill.
Yeah. Well, if there's no more comments, I'll move to adjourn this meeting.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Meeting adjourned.
You may coach us, Courtney. Coach us along here. You don't have willing.
Tell Matthew that this one.
I'm a little rusty on Robert's rules, but
We don't observe Robert's rules.
we don't.
I don't think so, no. Lister Mike, do you know? Do we observe Robert's Rules of Order? I don't think that's our
It's
governing point of order.
it's part of them. It's morphed a little bit.
It's close to.
It's protocol. It's protocol of the city, I believe.
I think it's James' rules of order.
That sounds more accurate.
James rules of order.
Okay, Steve.
Do you want to go right into it? Or you want it till 5?
No, we can't. You have to wait till 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5:12?
We never have.
You never have?
It says it will follow.
We always say
Says
immediately
immediately
following
following.
after.
Go ahead and go in.
Ah, okay.
We can go right into it. We always have.
Okay, we'll go right into it then.
Do we,
I didn't set the time for the regular meeting.
do we want to
Intentionally.
let our attorney know?
Okay, yeah.
Unless you guys want to wait. It's up to
You
you.
wait for the attorney?
I'll just give James a courtesy call. How about that? We good with that?
Just time to get moving.
He's always late anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Fashionably late.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna try to fix it so that we can see everything.
Hey, that is not let you know that right here.
It's usually the last 10 minutes and just shift right into it. This is just suggested. They've done it a couple different ways. I mean, we've had one start before one time, you know, so.
James is the blue anyways, and
Oh,
he
no.
totally forgot that we had a meeting. So
See,
he's gonna try to see if somebody will come cover, but we shouldn't be waiting for him.
okay, let's go. Let's go. Okay, let's, I got 20 till 5, December 16th, 2019. Let's call this meeting to order. And start with the invocation. I'll do it unless somebody else wants to do it. Okay, let's pray. Father, as always, we thank you for this meeting today and everyone in attendance here. Please bless our agenda as we work to provide vital services to our customers and to our community. Help us manage our resources wisely for the best outcome from our efforts and to live out our mission statement. As we approach this holiday season, guide us all to help those in the community that go without the basic needs that we who are fortunate have. Let the joy of giving be a blessing to the giver. In Christ's name, amen. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before I get into the consent agenda, I'd like to read the mission statement for the Board of Public Works. I think this is a needed thing to add to our meeting protocol. The mission statement of the Hannibal Board of Public Works is to provide safe, reliable utility products with excellent customer service at reasonable prices. Let's move on to the consent agenda. I'm assuming that all the board members have read the minutes, the payrolls, and the claims.
Yes, sir. Ma'am,
I ask for a motion that these be approved.
I'll make a motion.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Minutes, payrolls, and claims are duly accepted. All right. I see we have no one signed up for comments from the audience. Does anyone want to say anything? No? Okay. All right, let's move on to regular reports. The general manager and operations report.
All right, just wanted to highlight a few things that are contained within my report. For the past 12 months, Prairie State's capacity factor is at 86%, resulting in a per megawatt charge of $65.47. In the front office, we're in the process of conducting interviews and filling a vacant CSR position. We recently held two days of meetings last week regarding the health benefits of both the HBPW and the city employees. And then we're also doing some harassment training on this Thursday.
How'd the insurance stuff go?
It was accepted as well as it could be. I mean, 5% increase is what the Benefits Trust Board passed on to the utility and the city. That was ultimately passed on to the employees. So
5% isn't bad. It's slightly above inflation. Okay. It's better than I thought we were going to get.
the increase that the board put in place wasn't as much as the benefits manager had suggested.
Okay.
The board's trying to implement some programs that would help control cost in the future.
Okay.
And so they're hoping those plans and those programs that were starting to be implemented last year, we start to really see that
Are we talking
come to
like,
fruition this next year. So
healthy living programs, or are we talking about specific cost-oriented, go see this doctor sort of thing?
they put some contracts in place that we see reduce cost at certain places of care. And so implementing some steerage to get employees to use those facilities so that the plan isn't charged as much on the back end.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And
Very
so they part of the reason they didn't implement, large increase on the premium side was they wanted to see how some of these programs and these plans that they've put in place have pan out before making a large increase in premium. But if these programs are not used, then ultimately the premiums will have to increase by more. So
Yeah.
some more on the personnel side. Matt Finley, the water department, water distribution crew, he was nominated and voted as the employee of the month for November. We put together a letter that we're sending to DNR, talking to them about how the board elected to put the stormwater funding issue back on the November 2020 ballot, how that impacts the schedule that is contained in our stormwater management plan, and basically laying it out there for them, how the lack of funding is kind of hampering what we're able to do, and asking them for feedback on how we navigate the process moving forward. So we'll keep you up to date on that process as it moves forward. So that letter just went into them last week.
Are they known to be understanding?
They can be. If you reach out to them and try to work things out on the front end of things, I think they can, at least we know going into it. So Army Corps of Engineers did their annual inspection of the Bear Creek Dam. I don't know if you recall, but when DNR did their annual or their inspection for part of their permit process last year. They found that the spillway wasn't constructed as the plan showed, and so the calculations for the volume of water it could carry wasn't the same as what originally was thought. And so they put some restrictions on us as far as how much volume of water we can hold behind the dam and some things moving forward. So the Corps has been looking into that, and there's been dialogue between the Corps and DNR on, you know, how we move forward or what was designed versus what was actually constructed. And so we're working through that process. The Corps took some more measurements and will likely be talking with us in the future about taking some additional measurements so they can hone in on what their calculation is and work with DNR and see how we can keep this process moving forward. So more than likely, we're still going to have to remove some vegetation that has grown in that spillway channel since the dam was constructed back in '62. Probably going to have to remove some sediment from it. So that's something that we'll probably have to get moving on in the next couple of months.
But we are in compliance.
But we are in compliance, yes. On electric department, we had some outages due to, we had 4 events due to wind and 3 events due to vehicle accidents that our trailing average on our availability had dropped a little bit from what it's been in September and October. You can see we had 3 vehicle accidents knocking out power back on November 21st, and then the wind there around the 27th had 4 events that knocked out quite a few number of customers, and some of them for extended period of time. So
these vehicle accidents, they knocked the poles down, all 3 of them? Really?
So,
Actually, there's 4 total accidents throughout that, but 2 of the poles have been replaced in the past 2 years, one on Grand, and then one right there at Broadway Extension, right before you hit Broadway, right there at that, it's a laundry man.
Laundromat.
There. Pole right there.
is everybody okay?
Yes, it's broken.
water distribution, we had 8 main breaks during the month. 3 of them required boil orders to be issued. Sewer side, no SSOs for the month, which is a good thing, and the crew replaced 40 feet of sewer main. Water treatment plant, as was alluded to a little bit earlier, you see November 2019 numbers of roughly 109 million versus November 2018 where we're right around 100 million. So we're not seeing the loss of usage from Rawls County like we had thought initially. So
Do we have any inkling why that might be?
part of it is increased in our industrial usage.
General Mills.
That's a big part of it, yes. Wastewater plant, we're still on little on the high side due to the high river level, but still below what we had saw back in October and even November of the previous year. Winter safety was the topic of our safety meeting. NISC, we just recently went through an upgrade. Part of this upgrade will allow us to continue to test online customer signups. We're working through a process that will allow customers to sign up without having to necessarily come in here and complete the whole process. So. And then on the meter reading side of things, we were able to work with the vendors and get the daily usage information imported into our billing software. And so we're moving forward with and deploying 100 electric and 100 water meters. So that's something that's going to be going out.
Are they going to 200 total sites, or is it going to be one site is going to get a smart electric and water meter?
I'm not sure.
It's one site, I think.
I'm not sure on that.
I'm pretty sure. It's kind of work together, so if you have water and electric, they have to
Talk to each other.
Do both, yeah.
as far as
Cool.
I'm just curious, does it matter how far apart they are? The water and the electric meter?
There is some limitations. not just distance, but also what's in between where the water meter is located, where the electric meter is
I recall
located.
that Matt was saying that this new water meter is 3 watt instead of 1 watt. Am I correct?
It does have some more power, yes. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight was what Councilman Dobson had mentioned. You know, we've got 1,751 delinquents for the month, and 109 of those were cut off for non-payment. So that's all I've got for my report, unless there's any other questions.
Your supervisor, was he replaced at the wastewater treatment plant? Kendrick, was his name?
Lance Kendrick, yes.
Yeah. Is his, have you got a posted? His job posted?
We're going to post it this week.
Okay.
Yes.
And the CSR?
CSR, we've conducted some interviews for it, and we're talking those interviews over internally.
Director of Operations?
Not moved on forward on that
Haven't
yet.
moved on that? Is that something Beverly would deal with
As far as
the posting, the job description and all that?
we've got the job description. It was just recently updated.
Okay.
It's just a matter of moving forward with it.
Yeah, we really need to get that position filled.
Okay. I'll talk with her about it and let you know.
Do you have anything else, Matt?
Nope,
No?
that's all I got.
Okay, next we have the financial report. The money guy.
We're here playing about money tonight, so I'm going to try to be brief. First page of your packet is the balance sheet. Unrestricted cash decreased by about $1.4 million from last month, and fixed assets increased by a similar amount due to ongoing progress in the water GAC project. The next page is the income statements. The first one is the current month actual compared to budget. November was an excellent month financially, as the unfavorable variance driven by the difference in the budget and actual timing of the outage at Prairie State from October was reversed. We kind of talked about that last month, and I had made the prediction this month would reverse, and luckily it did. Combined with higher than budget operating revenues in the water fund, this caused company-wide net income to be about $426,000 more than budgeted. So pretty much reversing and offsetting the amount of the unfavorable variance from last month. The next page is current month actual compared to the same month last year. Lower purchase power costs in the electric fund and lower operating expenses in the sewer fund caused November's company-wide net income to be about $353,000 higher than the same month a year ago. The next page is current fiscal year to date compared to budget. Of course, these year to dates obviously are much more informative than just looking at 1 month at a time. We're now 5 months into the new fiscal year, and company-wide net income is about 30% more than budgeted. Lower than budget operating revenues in the electric fund are being more than offset by savings and purchase power in that fund. The water fund continues to reflect the favorable results of the 2 months of unbudgeted sales to Ross County Public Water Supply District, as well as a discount early payoff of our escrow trust agreement with them. The sewer fund's results are being negatively affected by the higher than budget operating expenses, more than offsetting higher than budget operating revenues. So kind of to summarize, all in all, it's a very solid year financially. We're saving on purchase power due to lower MISO marketplace prices in the electric fund, and the water fund's benefiting from that early payoff with Rawls County, as well as selling them some extra gallons we didn't count on in our budget. Next page back is our current fiscal year to date actual compared to the same time period last year. Company-wide net income is about 3% more than the same time period last year, driven again by lower purchase power costs, more than offsetting lower operating revenues in the electric fund, also more than offsetting higher operating expenses in the sewer fund. Prices in the MISO marketplace are trending about 12% lower than the same time period a year ago. That's totally outside of our control, but we're benefiting from it. Of course, other information I give you is cash reserves, investment listing, the dashboard, all the usual suspects there. Very solid year, very great month, and a very solid year 5 months into it so far financially.
Hey, Abe, I have some questions on the investment page.
Let's do it.
Caught me off guard in a good way. So,
Let's hear it.
because of FDIC insurance laws, we keep our, investments under $250,000. And on this page, I spy two of them that are over that threshold, and I'm just wondering why that is.
Which one are you referring to specifically, Stefan? The Fannie Mae callable bond, like
Yep.
6 lines down?
Yep.
That's a federal that's an agency bond, Fannie Mae.
Okay.
So it's just backed by the full faith and credit of the government as it stands on its own, so you don't need FDIC on that.
Okay. And then the other one was the CD with F&M.
Yep, F&M has pledged letters of credit issued to us by the Federal Home Loan Bank of Des Moines,
Okay.
with BPW as the beneficiary.
Oh.
So again, it's kind of backed by the faith and credit of the government in a roundabout way.
Okay. Are those instruments that you like or dislike, or it just kind of happened, or?
Instruments being these investment options. Oh, at the time, it's always just an analysis of rates, of what's providing the best rates.
Okay.
Ironically, CDs often yield a slightly higher rate than the agency bonds because big investors, pension funds, can plop $50 million at a time into bonds, whereas CDs have to go through a little shopping exercise. At our asset size, the CDs typically yield better.
Okay.
I've been trying the last year or so to bring money home to F&M. I kind of rate shop would be my generic term for that. I check with F&M to see what their rate is. I check with Commerce Capital Markets, and the F&M rate has been same or better than the Commerce.
3.1% on a CD is really good.
That was before the Fed cut rates a couple times.
Yeah.
The newest CD there at 1.95 more.
Oh yeah. That's
after more
9 months more recent.
Yeah, it reflects current times.
Okay.
As long as F&M is willing, over time, I like to see the top list get shorter and that middle list get longer.
Absolutely.
Bring money back to F&M, but they can put it to work locally with obviously local businesses and consumers, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Cool. That's I think all I had for you.
Questions I can answer, Stefan, are the ones I like best.
Makes me feel good too.
Good for my job security.
Yeah. Cool.
You guys have anything else? Or?
Do not. You're free to go.
All right.
Thank you, Abe.
Thank you, Abe. Next, we have project report.
Welcome, Drew.
Thank you. Forgive my tardiness.
Good.
First project I want to talk about is the GAC project. They're on the board there behind Drew. You can see this December drone photo, which really doesn't even do it justice. I don't know if you've been by there lately. They've got the walls installed all the way around, and they're working on installing the roof. Last week they had about half the north side roof on when I was up there. I can't remember if it was last Thursday or Friday. So they're making progress. The plan will be after they get the roof installed, they've rented some industrial heaters to put in there so they can keep the other trades going as far as installing electrical. There's some block walls that have to be constructed on the interior, and then keep the painter going as well. So
Cool.
So progress is moving along pretty good as far as their schedule and their ability to meet the deadline. So
Are we on schedule? Or within the margin?
we're within the margin, yes. There were some valves that they were only able to get about half of them delivered in time to get them installed. The other half, I think they're showing up in sometime in January.
Okay.
So it's going to be pretty tight to get those installed and get all the controls, wiring, and electric ran to them. But they'll be able to run the water through there in February is the plan. So
Most of the piping's in, right?
most of the piping's in. Yeah, there's some smaller sample piping and stuff like that will still need to be ran, but
Right.
they install a lot of that before they put the steel.
What about training for the operators? When we start that?
Probably once we get the plan up and kind of going in February.
Okay.
I mean, as far as the process itself is going to be relatively easy.
Are we going to do that or Black and Beach?
It'll be a combination.
Combination?
Yep.
Okay.
And working with the contractor on the control side of things. So.
Good.
We got the GAC media contract coming up later. Something new I want to bring to your attention is the die maker's tank rehabilitation. It's something that's been in the 5-year plan for a number of years now and was on schedule to be done once we completed the Warren Barrett tank. And so that was completed this summer. And so worked with Miko Engineering and got that project out to bid right now and hope to bring you bids at the January meeting. So that'll be a painting of the interior and exterior, some minor rehab work on the interior. Apparently at some point in the past it's had ice on the interior and ripped a ladder from the sidewall, so they got to reinstall it or install a mixer in there, prevent any icing issues in the future, but also help with our water age and keep the water from stratifying and overall better leaving it. Continue to work in the downtown SSO project area on the sewer side of things. We're also working with Trek on updating documentation that we will be providing to DNR as it relates to the project and our project schedule. We'd met with DNR back in late August about the 15-year schedule that was laid out roughly 7 years ago, in the hopes to eliminate that constructed SSO down by the flood or stormwater pumping basin. And as we've gotten more and more into this, we have eliminated a lot of I&I, but ultimately, with the rivers that we've been having and such, we really are concerned about getting rid of that constructed SSO. And so we're going to be working with MDNR on, showing them we're doing the best that we can, but we still don't want to get rid of that. We want to leave it as a safety valve rather than flooding a bunch of basements and such. So I'll keep you up to date on that.
Thank you.
And then Pepping Stone has been working on getting documents drawn or put together on temporary repair on the North Street storm sewer plan. Also working with FEMA on cost estimates and such. There'll be a FEMA official here Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. Finally, the river's low enough that we can get in there, and their inspector can see what type of damage there was on the interior. So,
How much will they be involved in that process, or are they just a check writer?
I've never been through the FEMA process before.
Yeah.
My understanding is we're going providing them data on everything that we claim is flood damage with a cost estimate, and then there's a determination at some point what they'll cover, what they won't cover, and
So they're somewhat like an insurance adjuster.
yeah,
Okay.
they're allowed to pay a certain amount for this or that,
Okay.
and then we'll have to make decisions moving forward based upon how we
Do they have,
move forward.
do they have published percentages of contribution?
They only contribute a certain amount. Now, in the past, the state agency has kicked in additional monies, so it's been, total monies received up in the 75 to 80%, maybe even a little bit more, but again, that's not guaranteed. Once FEMA determines what they'll pay, then the state agency decides to kick in. So it's my understanding of how the process works. So,
Good.
so that's all I have relates to the project report.
Okay, old business, water rate schedule of fees and charges. You want to do any more with that? They're ready for you.
At this point, we just, Board BPW management asks the board to formally approve the rates and the schedule fees and charges that we promulgated and discussed during the rate hearing a few minutes ago. To take effect January 1st, 2020.
Before we do that, I just want to reconfirm that our bond covenants are contingent on us doing this.
I'm not sure how to use the word contingent. It's kind of a strong word. But when we applied for our bond rating, we definitely showed them our rate track, our credit rating and everything else, and sold our bonds. We provided them our revenue model showing the 5-year projection, which baked in or took into account the rates that we're discussing tonight.
Okay. So another way of saying that is, if we don't do this, that would result in negative credit rating consequences and potential.
Again, I'd hate to make that
Be
kind
that
of-
strong.
Be that strong.
Yeah.
I just would say that during our bond rating for the 2019 water revenue bonds, we laid out a rate track that included these rates here, and into the revenue model. At the same time, trying to convey to the underwriters that each round of rate hearings was contingent upon a hearing like we had tonight. We can't promise 5 years of rates or lock them in at one time. But in a larger context, not following our previously proposed rate track would probably
Be inadvisable.
it would not look it would not behoove us from a credit rating standpoint. I think it would probably be a fair thing to say.
Okay.
So you're asking for a motion to approve that?
We are.
Approve the schedule of fees and charges, or the general rate provisions, or
Both.
the water rate increase?
Asking for a motion to approve the water rate schedule set forth in the public rate hearing, as well as the schedule of fees and charges.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to,
I will make a motion to
Accept these.
approve the water rate schedule and the schedule of fees and charges.
or a second?
Yes, I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Abe.
approved. Okay, we got the GAC media contract.
Yeah,
Matt
this is a contract that came out of our meeting we had back in October when Black and Beach was here and presented the quotes that were provided by Calgon and Evoqua Carbon manufacturers. At that time, it was determined you wanted us to move forward with a contract with Calgon. We've been working on that since this time, and in the board packet is that contract that resulted. It is for a 3-year term. At the October board meeting, we had talked about doing a longer term, but not knowing exactly how quick this carbon is going to be used. In talking with the engineers, they recommended a shorter term on this initial contract, so we can work out the process and hopefully fine tune our process and maybe give us a better understanding of our cost moving into a longer term contract in 3 years.
So a longer term contract might result in some positive savings, but if we're drastically overusing or underusing the amount of carbon we bought, it doesn't really matter.
And the way, without a history, also we tied carbon to a 3% increase, and we didn't want to tie that into a 10-year contract without knowing kind of what the carbon market is. I mean, we can see what it's been in the past, but there's some changes that more people are using carbon, and so it's going to affect the price of it. So we're just asking for approval. You can see the cost associated with it when the memo was there in the board packet. So it's the same thing that was presented back in October.
So, do I hear a motion for the Calgon contract?
I'll make a motion.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Duly approved. Okay. Wade and Stables here? Auto report? Okay, all right, I'm sorry.
You're turning in the barrel.
Lay it on us.
This button.
Okay, yep, now it's good. Well, thank you for having us again this year. I'm Anita Failer, I'm the partner, and Carrie Peters is one of our lead auditors. And I will just briefly go over this because I know it's probably not the most exciting thing to do. And I think you guys all have a copy of the report. Okay. Page 1 is our auditor's report. This is our piece of the financial statements that tells if we believe these financial statements are materially correct or not, and we do, so it is a clean opinion. You'll see down there, there's a couple things that talk about adverse opinions, and all that means is that this is not an opinion on the entire city. This is just the board, so we can't say that we're giving an opinion on the entire city, just this piece of the board. So you'll see on page 2, the unmodified opinion. That's the important thing on your side. So, and then page 3, we'll start the management's discussion and analysis. This is your area to kind of point out any highlights that you want to point out for the year, any plans for going forward for budgeting, that kind of thing goes in this section too. So it's your area to kind of say what you want to say. So you can kind of look at that. It's also the area that will compare last year to this year because everything else in the audit report is just a single year. So if you wanted to see them compared to each other, this is the place to look for that as well. So that means the financial statements start on page 6. That's the statement of net position. This will show you each fund. Electric, water, sewer, and stormwater are separate, so you can see each fund and how the results for each fund are. Nothing to highlight here, although your cash went up, and that's just due to that new bond, and you hadn't spent the proceeds yet, so your cash is up quite a bit from the year before, which also means your liabilities are up because you issued that new bond. Page 7 is the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, which is basically your income statement. You can see each fund for the year. Electric had a net income of $1.5 million, water $1 million, sewer fund $772,000, and then the stormwater fund. Obviously, you didn't have any revenue in that one, so you had a loss of $575,000. So, page 8, the statement of cash flow. So that takes all the strange things out of the balance sheet, the accrual type things, and lets you know just what cash did. So that's sometimes important to someone to know.
And just to reiterate, that massive cash position in the water fund is from unused bond money?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's a lot.
Yeah, it does look a little funny, but whenever you have a bond issue that you hadn't spent all the proceeds, that's what happens. So.
Okay.
Page 10 starts the notes to financial statements. So if you wanted to know any details of anything in these financial statements, that's where you would find it. You can just see your accounting policies, more information on the debt, huge footnote on the pension because that's required. So that's 3-4 pages of your footnotes are from the pension and the other post-employment benefits, the OPEB liability. And that is just what you owe when you hire someone. You owe them their salary, and then you also owe them some post-employment benefits because you promised to pay certain things after they retire. So that's and that's something that's been new in the last few years. That's now on your balance sheet. So that takes up a lot of your footnotes, and it's a lot of language coming from your actuary and that kind of thing. So, and then there's just some extra schedules in the back that just give you a little bit more information. The comparative statement of operating factors, again, can kind of compare the 2 years with each other as far as customers and rates and things like that. You do have the assets and depreciation schedule back here to see that a lot of your money spent this year's little construction in progress that you have going on in the water fund, things like that. So if you want more detail, I can, but I don't want to bore everyone. So I just wanted to give you an overview of how the financial statements are structured. So
Good.
any questions?
I'm okay.
Do you have any
Hey, it was a good year.
recommendations or comments?
No, we just, always looking for ways to strengthen your internal controls. That's always a good thing to do. The board, has an active role already in reviewing things. I know that Abe, I just heard him, he gives you a comparative and you get nice financial reports, and that's always important as well. So,
Okay.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anita.
Appreciate it. Yeah, we have,
Well,
oh, you want to approve that? Okay, that's right,
To
that's
accept
right.
it, yes.
Yeah, okay.
I'll make a motion to accept the audit from Wade Staples for 2019.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Audit is duly approved. Mr. J. Stowe, Utility Group. We'll get to the good stuff here.
The weather, I appreciate the weather very much that you got lined up.
We did it just for you.
I appreciate that very much. So, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here. Really primarily want to be able to answer your questions as we go through this. Hannibal Board of Public Works has, my estimation, has three really key jobs: improving the public health and the environment, providing for public safety, both the employees and the customers and citizens in the area, and supporting economic development. If you're doing those three things and you're doing them well, then you're going to be in good shape. I had the opportunity to come up here last month and spend a fair amount of time talking to a whole bunch of people. And before I get into the details of the report and the findings, and I've shared this individually with a lot of groups, but a lot of individuals I met with, there were two or three things that this report is not, and I want to be sure that I talk about that as well. The organizational review of the utility and the organization was not anything to do with a disciplinary review of any employees or trying to find a disciplinary problem. There was no desire or effort to privatize the system, and there was no and is no recommendation coming from me to merge with the city, because in fact I think the structure that you have, and I think you've shown it tonight, this is efficiently run meeting and process, but it is the only thing you're focused on. And so when the city council is able to appoint people to the board, and then the board is able to hire good quality people to run the organization, you're going to serve the customers better. So being owned by the city and being a separate board, I think, is the best alternative, because it provides you some focus on the utility. You've got roughly $35 million organization that you're running, and you need a set of experts to focus on it and manage it. So I like the structure. I think it's the right structure for the organization. There have been several issues over the past few years that the people in the community and that you all are much more familiar with than I am. And so whenever I hit on these large issues in history, the specifics of which you can relive as I say them out loud, but the Prairie, all the way back to the Prairie State and the issues associated with that, the public input and change to water treatment, the financial concerns that you've had over the last year, internal financial concerns, and then even the stormwater utility, including the subsequent lost ballot measure. All of those, each of those things individually would have just been a problem at the moment that you would have been able to deal with. When you combine those and pile those on, it had the effect of, instead of being a short-lived issue, some trust and concerns with the public, some trust with the relationship between the Board of Public Works and the city, and then some trust lost with the citizens and the customers. All of that combined made it for a series of events that have caused some problems. And so how can you move forward and fix all of these issues? And I think the best part of what I'm going to come talk to you about is that we're not leading up to some kind of big bomb where it's going to be, that I'm going to share some big additional problem. What you have is some core issues related to communication, accountability, maybe some safety, some org structure, and then your utility rates, as you talked about them tonight. In order to keep them from getting higher, you've got to manage the cost associated with those, because relatively high utility rates. The communication is one that will intertwine through the whole discussion. What I found when I met with the staff, and I met with while I was on site, the first step in the process was a really lot of data that was sent to me, and that even that process that I got several weeks before I came up showed the teamwork that was required within your staff, and I think that it's something to be commended because I didn't even realize how much I was actually asking for when the pile of information came, and it required across the whole organization lots of input, and the input came in a timely manner, in a professional manner, and almost everything that I asked for that you would expect to see in a utility like yours actually came forward. So I appreciate that, and I knew from the beginning that you had good teamwork. Once I got on site, I toured the facilities here, the plants, the substations, and just generally around town. And you can tell before you even meet employees, you can tell that they care about what's going on and the opportunity, because it looks good. It's all taken care of. It's well taken care of, well maintained. So all of those things gave me a good impression as I got on site to start talking about just generally what was going on. And so I'm going to talk about some problem areas because you didn't ask me to come just share all the good things, but you've got good staff that care about what is going on and care about the community. So underlying all of these things, so keep that in mind. The communication, there needs to be more, better, more frequent, more often, the communication. And that's communication internally. That's from the board to the general manager to the supervisors and to the staff internally. And then it's also externally, the relationship with the city and other agency stakeholders. While I'm talking, sometimes I'm going to say things that are board-related activities. Sometimes I'm talking about staff-related activities. Hopefully it will be clear, but there's the communication is one that I think needs to keep on improving. For example, even the transition to the interim general manager, some of the employees learned about that through the media. That's an easy fix, except it requires a concerted effort, and it's got to be ongoing kind of effort. Senior staff needs to be on the same page as they're discussing things with each other and with the staff. You had a employee survey, a culture survey that asked questions like, how would you like to be communicated with? There are several options listed: email, message, memo, bulletin boards. That was my age coming out. It's message boards that you have in there. So, and really the answer is all of those things. You can ask the question, how do you prefer to be communicated with, but all of them need to be there. And then all employees don't have an email. Seems like a simple thing to fix, and I would encourage all employees to have the email. Now, some of the employees might not use the email, but not having the email and not using it are two different things that you can help. Then the relationship with the city and the city council. The city owns the utility, and the city council is going to appoint the board. And I think that the relationship is delineated in the charter and policies, but there's still some ambiguity and some confusion about what needs to go sometimes to council and what does not. And I would encourage the board city attorney to work with the staff and with the city to clarify what those types of things are. You've had a requirement from the ordinance to go to the city council to update them on the water treatment. Timing was good. I happened to be here the night that Matt was presenting that to the city council. I would encourage you that there's no reason that you need an ordinance to require you to talk to the council. Go talk to them about all the issues on a regular basis and stay in front of them. It's going to be helpful for the general manager of this organization and the city manager to have a strong working relationship. That partnership between you and the city is one of the foundations for the economic development, and I would continue to be involved and even increase your efforts on the Economic Development Council, because in order for the community to work together and to improve, the city and this organization need to be together. Any significant economic development project will have a positive impact on the board and the culture of the board.
Hey Jay, real quick, in your career experience, what could you tell us about your exposure to how utilities interact with their local economic development councils?
So there's
in terms of funding and direct interaction.
Yeah, so there's lots of different ways, and every organization I've been in has had some amount of funding to the Economic Development Council. That depends on what is going on and where all the funding comes from. So I would think a direct investment would be appropriate into the Economic Development Council. And I think this is true. I think that you would expect to be on the board and be involved heavily in the activities. But more important, in some ways, more important than the board and the dollars is the economic development for a utility is that you have if you don't have a reliable system, which you do. But if you don't have a reliable system, then it doesn't matter what economic development you're doing. So keep that pause good. Keep your rates, manage your rates as much as you can, and then be open and flexible to new ideas. So if the data center comes in, a data center is really, really good load for a utility. So find a way to make things like that work. If you have other types of industrial or commercial, then find a way to do that and be sure you're putting together the best proposals you can and support the economic development. It's one of the foundational things that a utility does, is keep that in front of you all the time.
In your experience as the utility, the largest, if not one of the largest contributors to development councils?
Typically, they're going to be way up there, yeah.
Okay.
The city, county, and it's an awful lot of times it's a public-private partnership, but yes, going to be significant.
Okay. Thank you.
That strong partnership is going to provide you the basis for economic development projects. Relationship with the city also crosses into some of the stormwater-related activities. And you talked about this earlier today, the stormwater management plan, the best management practices are out there, and the timing is getting a little bit out of whack. And so be sure you're making good decisions about that. I don't have specific recommendations, but some of the language, you're responsible for below ground and they're responsible for above ground. Some of those things are not going to be clear. And as you get into it and get further down the road, it's going to require more clarity and more communication with the city to get that done. The accountants left, so my next part is talking about controls and accountability. And I think that there's been a culture within the utility that, and this might be a strong word, but I think has become lax over time in holding staff accountable. I think that has changed. I think you all have made the changes in that, but the financial issues that you've dealt with over the last several months and the transition that you're in right now, you've got an audit that has come and said that everything it's a clean audit. That's positive. You've made lots of progress on that front. My concern is that being sure that policies are followed, and if you're not following that policy, what other policies are you maybe not following? I didn't see or find anything that was of a major concern, but I would encourage the management and the leadership team to review your policies, be sure that things that need to be added or deleted, even the investment policy that you talked about. I can't remember if you talked or you're going to talk about that. It's on the agenda, and in the memo that Abe wrote, he noted that that policy hadn't been updated for 9 years. There should be a policy or a procedure in place to update your policies and your procedures on a regular basis, and so, which sounds circular, but it's important. That will provide you a framework to operate the organization effectively. The next one sounds a little bit tricky too. Safety. You get a report every month, and you've gotten a report month after month about the safety of the organization, and so it appears that you have a safe environment. What I'm not sure of is how much of that is because of actions and how much of it is because you've just been safe. And you go through, you have a monthly safety meeting, and it's similar that it, in a lot of ways, from one year to the next year, and I want to be sure you're actually being safe, not going through the motions. This is really not a board level other than being aware of safety. It's more of a management level, is making sure that you're being safe. And one of the concerns is even this building. I call it a Tetris game that you use in the parking of your trucks in the back. The safety from people and then safety from just equipment, getting trucks in and out of this place is a problem. The housekeeping is pretty impressive considering the structure that you have in the back. The driving of the trucks past the customer seems dangerous in the parking lot. So I would encourage you to continue down the path of looking at your building, and then on the other side of my mouth, balance that with the costs that you've got that are going on. And I've seen a lot of utilities that get to a spot where they decide they want to build something new, and then they overbuild, and it becomes a lot of money. So anyway, focus on being sure the building is safe, and then the management needs to focus on being sure that the activities you're using for safety are actually moving forward and helping with safety. Within the regulatory side of things, I also, the North American Electric Reliability Council has bulk power responsibilities. You are in compliance with that process. If you had to stand up a compliance section, it would be very expensive and very hard to do. So every single job that you do on your transmission system, just be sure you're checking that to be sure it's good. And then the same thing we talked about on stormwater. The regulations on stormwater are, you're going to need to comply with those. You said you're going to comply with those. You have a policy to comply with those, but you've got complications of getting the rates in place to do that. As far as organization and staffing, you talked about this just a few minutes ago too. The general manager span of control is too broad. The operations position, the operations director position is important. I would recommend putting that back in place. Timing of when you put that back in place when you're in an interim period is a question that we can talk a little bit more about. But I think it's important for me to say this. Matt has done an admirable job given the types of things that were tossed at him and continue to be tossed at him. And so I think that I appreciate seeing the work that he's doing, just trying to be sure that he's got his hands on this. The policy updates and the items that you have taken and brought to the board have been the right things to do to get things back in order and keep things in the middle of the road. So you and your staff have all done a good job doing that. Saying that, I also think that once the permanent structure is in place, then you need to look at the functional roles that each of your departments are covering. It may make sense, the organizational structure, but there are some things such as, and this is just one of the examples, there's several, but one example is your purchasing in your warehouse is not reporting through the finance group, and I feel like that's a finance item, and it is difficult to ask somebody to be responsible for all of your finance and then not have them be responsible for all of your finance. And so stay focused on that piece of it with the functional review. Rates, you all already know this. I think the staying on top of that, you had rate studies done in 2015 for electric and sewer, in 2018 for water, and you've got lots of the cost of the water system is going to drive rates. I appreciate you talking about the percentages of what is each different component, but the biggest component of that is the impact on the change in the water treatment. But rate increases don't need to be a foregone conclusion, and it becomes the responsibility of the management, each member of the management team, to keep their rates under control. Even this will be a little bit more controversial for you, but even the falling to the default of it's less than inflation doesn't have to be a foregone conclusion. You can manage some of your areas and not necessarily have rate increases tied to inflation. As you see changes in your the way that people use electricity, water, and sewer, you're seeing, I realize you saw some increases that in the last, over the last year, but as you have higher increases in your utility rates, I think that you're going to see more and more people move towards some of the distributed resources, whether it's solar, battery, even LED lights. The transition to energy efficiency will start to impact your rates. It will be like losing a wholesale water supplier, except it will be smaller and you won't recognize it immediately. So being prepared for that is going to become more and more critical as you all are doing some things, studying how to deal with electric vehicles and looking at solar farms and looking at other activities. Those are going to become more important, and the pace of change is coming faster within the organization and within the business. The single largest expense you have comes back to power supply, and just continuing to focus. The general manager and finance director are going to need to be really involved, because even small changes in that power supply arrangement have a big impact across overall. I think we've hit on economic development a fair amount. I would keep that as one of the core foundational things that you work on. The new technologies are going to put further strains on rates. You've done a good job giving payment options to customers. You've talked a little bit tonight about the fact that there's some customers that are having trouble paying, and 1,700 customers that are delinquent each month. With your new metering system, will give you some opportunities and options to provide other alternatives for them to pay. And so as you move in that direction, focus on taking care of your customers. You have not as high a customer satisfaction rate as your mission statement would indicate you want. And so I would encourage you to focus on your customers and do what's best for them. And whenever you're doing that, the more flexibility and options that you provide them, the better served I think they will be. You've got a good team in place. You provide a valuable service to Hannibal every day. Relationships in the community have been stressed, and that has caused stress for your employees and your staff. And it's caused some anxiety, both internally and externally. I mean, even the number of you here tonight, I think, points to some indication that there's been some stress internally and externally to the organization. But communication is going to become a key part of this. That communication from the board to all the way through the organization. When I talk to employees in particular, the employees said to me, they lamented, it used to feel like family here. I don't think that increasing communication, holding staff accountable, improving safety, updating the organizational structure, focusing on cost to manage rates are going to have a negative impact on the culture of Hannibal Board of Public Works. I think, in fact, if you do these things well, they will improve them. I don't think I said this in the very beginning, but there is no one single item fix to make things better. This is a process. The report is less important than the process. To fix these core issues, you treat each other with courtesy and respect, and you focus on the relationship between each other. You're going to be able to improve the culture, the morale, and make things better for Hannibal, the region, the utility, the organization, and the region. So I think we have opportunities to answer other questions in a little while, but I'll answer any questions you have. I've got a report that is continues. It's still in draft, and until after we finish some of the conversations tonight, and then I present to the employees and the staff tomorrow. Then I'll finish it and give you a final report at that point. But I'll be happy to answer any questions from you, and I appreciate the time that the members of the community and the staff put in to help get me prepared.
Thank you for the thoroughness. Best bang for our buck we've had in a while. Culture came up a few times. First came up about halfway through when we were talking about adhering to pre-existing policies, and then it came up at the end again. when we're talking about workplace culture and environment and how employees interact with each other.
Yeah.
I was about to ask you, but then you kind of answered it, and it seems like, as you said, there's no one silver bullet. And kind of the takeaway to build it up and keep it steady is just consistent courtesy and thoughtfulness. And
Yeah.
I mean, there's not one specific thing we as a board can do. Is that right? I mean,
No,
I don't know really what I'm struggling to ask here, but I'm trying to create a conversation.
So I think the board needs to be clear on direction that they're giving to the general manager, and the general manager needs to be clear on direction to give to the staff. I think you can tell when you walk through the building, the facilities, and even the whole community that the people that are here that I would say are doing the work they care about what they're doing, and they're proud of being a part of this organization. And so this is going to be kind of a negative kind of spin on this. So don't make it so they're not proud of what they're doing, because they're good. You've got good folks doing really good work. The culture piece is not something you can't make culture. It's going to grow, and you're going to let it occur over. If you start to focus on trying to fix culture, then it'll. My thought is that you fail at that. Instead, you treat people well, and you give people opportunities to do their job well. So set expectations and set them clearly, and then communicate. You don't want to. So I imagine if you haven't had this conversation, you probably should. You should tell your general manager you don't want to be surprised. That you should be sure that you're letting them know problems whenever they come up before they pop up in public. It's a two-way street. The general manager shouldn't be surprised. The employees shouldn't be surprised and find out things through the community. This is not a small city, small town type activity. The business of utility is a small world, and you've got 70-something employees that can be your best advocates for what you all are doing together. If you let them know what's going on, then they'll show you that they're really good.
So is it one? I'm sorry, one
Go
more.
ahead.
So is it fair to say that culture is set in every single interaction between every single set of stakeholders?
I think it is, and it's fair to say that it's set every time, and everything you do has to be thoughtful. And that's why some of the policy type things, there are a lot of employees that didn't have access to things to make bad decisions with, and they're doing the best job they can do. And then you've got things that are going on outside of their control, and that's frustrating to them. That's frustrating to the employees. And so do the right thing, make the right decisions at the board level all the way through. And then the outcome of that will be positive relationships and culture.
I think that social media has a lot to do with the employees. I think the employees see that they get on social media and they see a lot of negative comments about the Board of Public Works, and that's what I'm seeing a lot of, and a lot of untruth that is posted, which is part of social media. It happens.
Yes. So you have had a position in the past that's focused on education and public relations, and some of this I may say the wrong terminology, but having that type of a position to deal with key accounts and public relations may be something that is a good idea. To combat. So that's always been true. For utilities had problems with this before there were social media. You are providing a service that is, oftentimes, this gets to the point that the council members made during the public hearing. You are providing a service that to many of your customers, it is the second or third highest bill that they are paying, and they're paying it every single month, and they don't know what it's going to be until after the fact, and it weighs on them. And so it doesn't matter that it's 99.9899% reliable, and it doesn't matter that because they pay that and it's frustrating to them, and they start from a negative point. So how you treat them and how you provide that is going to start to change that. There's going to be negative things in the social media and in the press. It's relatively small, but you have 2 stars on your Google review. You can't make a goal to get your stars on your Google review moved up or to have positive statements. That's the same thing as working on culture. But you're right, it sometimes can be a problem. So combat untruths with truths and be sure you're sharing as much information as you can with your employees and the public. And that's the relationship with the city. There's the city and the city council, the board, and this organization should have the same goals, and that is to make Hannibal and the region better. And I think if you ask individually, they do. Something's happened along the way where people get a little bit sideways, and it really doesn't make any logical sense. But sometimes that happens whenever you are with each other all the time. So, everything is good. You've had a rough series of events, and you've made really pretty positive decisions moving forward. How you've communicated it, maybe you could have done better, and the only thing you can do to fix that is to do better going forward.
I'm sorry. Can I say something? I just want to say you're not alone. Everything that the Board of Public Works issues you guys have, the council has also. You're considered the city, and so any negative or anything like that comes at you all, Steve, also comes at us. We feel, but most of the time, on a personal level, I'm facing it very uneducated because of the lack of communication, the divide that's kind of been there before I think any of us. I will say that well before me, and I promise it's well before you all, and I know that for a fact.
Oh, yeah.
Because we all know who I am and what I've done, and why I'm here. I think that's one of the important things that he is talking a lot about in strengthening the communication and things, and that's so you guys do have some support, which should be us. I mean, we should be the ones that's supporting you guys in order for you to be able to support Matt and the rest
I
of
would
the
personally like to see more interaction between the board and the city council, to exchange information and to exchange what's going on, so we're all on the same page.
I mean, I don't think it would surprise you to learn that I learn a lot of your decisions through the media the same way your employees do.
I'm sorry
and I'm
about.
sure you all learn a lot of ours and that kind of thing. So I want you to know that I know it probably feels like that, but I promise you that you're not alone in that. Every time that there's an issue with the Board of Public Works, a majority of the citizens, we're the city. You, us, we're the city. If we could fix our communication and our working relationship together, I think it would be better for all of us because you would feel more supported in making big decisions because you're making big decisions, you're facing big issues. So I just want you to know that I really appreciate you bringing that up because I feel that's, and again, this is way before you.
Oh, yeah.
And way before I've ever had my position. Hopefully that's something we can fix and work on so you all can be better supported.
Melissa, understand that you can pick up the phone anytime and call any of us and
Absolutely.
and get the truth.
So and I would also say that this is that's good. Y'all should keep on doing that. Having more conversations between the board, who is appointed by the manager, but then approved by the council. I think that's important. It also is going to be important that the general manager and the city manager are working well together, because I'm gonna keep on coming back to this part that it's foundational that these two organizations would work well together. When you're at odds, then there's no social media, there's no PR that can fix that. We have got to work together and work well together, and then you can springboard off of that. If you're working well together, it makes economic development easier. It makes when there is a problem and a concern. I mean, you would be in a better position to explain the fixed costs versus the variable costs associated with your rates. And Abe answered that well when he was up here, but every single utility across the country is having that same discussion and having access to that. But all issues are better whenever you trust each other and you're working well together. And that is true with your external stakeholders, the city and others, your customers, your employees, the employees and each other. This is not no one-way street anywhere. The employees also have to be aware of the things that they're saying and the way that they're doing things. This is a sideline. It's really for tomorrow. Employees would complain to me that they didn't know about something that they explained, and then they explained to me what it was. So they knew about it. They just didn't like the way they heard about it. So it's a two-way street. Everybody's going to have to step up a little bit to be able to make things better. But appreciate that. Sorry, that probably went longer than you meant for me, but
There's no time on
if there's any other questions that we want to talk about, we can.
I started 20 minutes early, so.
Yeah, there you
Fix
go.
that.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Mr.
Jay.
Stowe. Okay. 2013 sewer bond refunding.
This is good news. So in the fall of 2013, we issued about $6.4 million of sewer bonds. With the passage of time, those are now eligible to be called or paid off early. Two elements have worked together to create an opportunity for cost savings based on current interest rates. One is a decline in market interest rates over that time period, and the other is an improvement in the credit rating on our sewer fund. Kind of the algorithm of the math behind calculating sewer our credit ratings changed, and I believe Standard & Poor's or the rating agency reached out to us a couple of years ago and said, hey, good news, your credit rating increased or improved. That creates opportunity for some real savings based on current rates, approximately $667,000 net of fees over the remaining life of those bonds. So it will not surprise us to learn that our financial advisor encouraged us to proceed with the refunding of those bonds. Of course, that's based on current interest rates, which are subject to change any day. And this transaction will not close until next April, approximately. It takes about 3 months to go through the process, ratings and all that kind of stuff, getting the paperwork put together.
So, Abe, will you walk us through this? Because, I mean, I understand how to refinance a house,
This is
but
the
I
same
don't.
thing.
So, I mean, are we taking out new debt to pay off the old debt at a better rate?
Yep.
Is that what's happening?
Yes.
Okay.
So very similar. It's identical to say Stephen bought a house 6 years ago. Your credit score at the time was like 620. Now it's say 720, and say mortgage rates came down from 4.5% to 3.5%. You would save a lot of money by refinancing your house. This is the same thing. We would now have a Series 2020 sewer bond issue, not adding new money, not adding length to the bonds, just simply taking the $5.1 million, refinancing those or refunding those and paying them off for the same time period as the original bond issue.
Okay.
The decrease in market interest rates, the improvement in our credit rating, we will reduce our true interest costs by about 1.5%, I believe, based on. Doesn't sound like a lot, but on $5 million, it adds up.
What was the interest rate in 2013?
Of course, these are a blended rate because unlike your house, these bonds, the ones that you paid off sooner, have a lower interest rates. I believe 4.35, something like that, was the true interest cost calculation at the time.
Do you know what prime is at today?
Oh, you'd ask me. I believe 4.75.
Okay.
Prime's a short-term rate. These are a long-term 20-year muni bond type rate.
Okay.
more tied to the long-term federal bonds, which sometimes move in sync with the prime, sometimes don't. I should have included in your packet from our financial advisor's website. She has a trend of municipal, a 20-year basket of muni bonds over time, and that has come down about 100 basis points or so, which is 1 percentage point.
What I'm getting at, though, is that anything that the Fed does between now and April, will impact what happens to these bonds, but not in a way that will make them not a cost saver.
Yeah, probably not. These are really, we discussed this a lot when we were issuing the bonds for the water project. Long-term rates are kind of, in my opinion, I think are a market and investor-driven rate. The Fed controls short-term rates, the federal funds rate, prime rate, that kind of stuff. So changes in the global economy, credit markets, all that could definitely change this, better or worse, over the next 5 months or so. If the transaction becomes not beneficial, we would, of course, not proceed with it at that point. But based on, as things sit today, it would be cost savings in total over the remaining life of the bonds, about $667,000.
If market conditions get incredibly unfavorable in 90 days, do we have a point of no return on when we can or cannot
proceed?
Yeah.
I'd have to get more information from our financial advisor on.
I'm not proposing that. I'm just purely curious at this point.
Yeah. I think I would assume that we have a point up until the day of the sale to back out. We'd be out the fees.
Yeah.
The financial advisor, her fee is contingent upon a bond sale closing. So, for example, not all the fees are that way.
Yeah, no, but that's nice.
The credit rating fee, it's incurred the day we have the conference call with the rating agency.
Okay.
Bond counsel, I'd hate to guess what they would say.
Yep.
Being wise lawyers that they are, with all due respect. There, at some point, Steph, to answer your question, there'd be a go, no-go time, but I'd have to get some information to tell you what that is.
Okay.
I believe we preserve our optionality up to the time of the sale, but
cool.
Minus the fees we incur up to that point. Transaction appears to be a slam dunk. It's our earliest opportunity to refund it next spring. It's about $50,000 a year savings, about $1,000 a week, so it's
worth it.
Yeah,
Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. With all that said, BPW management, Matt and I encourage the board to retain WM Financial Strategies as our financial advisor and Gilmore and Bell as our bond counsel. They've served us well in all of our other financing transactions the last several years. I don't know if you guys have any questions, or we'll be looking for a motion.
Any more discussion on that?
What's that now?
Any discussion on that? Okay. Okay, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next point of business is the investment policy. If I was being more proactive, I would have brought this to you last month when I gave you kind of the synopsis and overview of where our investments are held, the rates we earn, that kind of thing. Like Mr. Stowe mentioned, this policy hasn't been updated in a little over 9 years. It refers to an out-of-date federal FDIC coverage limit, which I don't like to have policies that refer to things that aren't accurate anymore. I try to make the policy more accurately reflect the securities that we are allowed to invest in under Missouri Municipal Public Funds Law, agency securities. I had here credit unions, of course. Though there are no savings and loans active in Hannibal anymore, who knows, maybe someday somebody will decide it's a wonderful life after all and open one up. So I love the reference to those in there, FSLIC, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's anyway. I try to describe that we don't tying funds up for more than 5 years creates a different set of risks. When you invest money, there's credit risk. You get your money back. There's interest rate risk. If rates change, is your investment at risk if you had to sell it? And you tie money up for a long time period, you create interest rate risk type of thing. So 5 years has been generally how we operate.
Is that standard across?
It's the best practice
the
I've
industry?
seen.
Okay.
More than 5, as my understanding, just really creates. It's a leverage effect there. It's like the longer you go out, one interest rate change or 1 percentage point change on your investment is a much higher effect on the market value, present value, than a 5-year investment type of thing. It's the kind of math classes I didn't do well at in college, so I have to describe summarized term. I like to say accountants use first grade math. 3rd grade if I'm being fancy. Thank Thank you, Jerry. Yep. Gave you a redlined version of the investment policy for your review there, and if this looks acceptable, we'll be asking for a motion to accept it as presented.
Okay. Okay, do I hear a motion for investment policy revision number 2?
I'll make a motion.
I will second.
All in favor? Investment policy revision 2 is duly passed.
The next one is under me, but I do the spreadsheets, I do the numbers. This is the 5-year capital plan. As part of this, Matt and I met with each of the supervisors who have capital budgeting responsibility or capital spending responsibility. We start with last year's 5-year plan, and then we delete the things that have been done, and we add things to be done. This document serves a dual purpose. It fulfills a requirement for us to report to City Hall, our Planning and Zoning Committee, by the end of January, our anticipated capital activities for upcoming 5 years. That's one purpose of it. The other purpose is begins our annual budgeting process, because these things require money to do. And so part of our budget is our operating budget as well as our capital budget. Some of these we'll pay cash for, some we'll finance, that kind of thing. Matt, are there any projects on here you'd like to bring particular attention to?
Not at this time. I mean, it's just more get it out there in front of you all, and that way you can digest it over the next month and so. If you got any questions, comments, feel free to contact us. And
I noticed the solar one was highlighted.
The highlighting refers to the fact that would possibly be financed. That's why it's highlighted in yellow.
Okay, you mean borrow?
Yes.
I thought it was a sun theme.
Well, that would have been clever. Thank you, Stephen. I'll take that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. I
I'm
like
a
to tell
literal
people,
thinker.
my mom was an artist, and I cannot draw a stick figure. My dad played college basketball, and I can't walk and shoot guns. I'm trying to find my way in this world. I'm waiting to.
I think we all are.
I had a great grandpa who hauled rock behind a team of mules, so I'm thinking I might be taking his footsteps.
So just to be clear, we can sit with this for a month.
Like for you to do that. No formal actions required at this time. We'll be asking you at the January meeting to adopt the 5-year plan. If the board would like to have a budgeting workshop or anything, be happy to do that. If you have just little specific questions,
I have a question.
please.
Along with that advanced funding, the 2013 sewer bond issue, do we need a motion for the Gilmore and Bell Bond Council?
That's what I was hoping to accomplish with that, a motion to approve WM Financial Strategies and Gilmore and Bell.
We don't need a subsidiary motion then.
I'd ask Courtney on that. I was hoping one motion to appoint WM or to retain WM Financial Strategies and Gilmore and Bell as our financial advisor and bond counsel. Should we do 2 separate motions or Drew?
I don't think,
It's probably not that big of a deal to just combine them.
Yeah, that's what I think. It's fine to do that.
yeah. And we have another one for hold the City of Hannibal harmless agreement on the Calgon contract.
that's something they fill out.
Okay, we don't sign that?
No, that's something the vendor fills out and
Okay,
provides
good.
to us
Good.
as part of the contract agreement.
Good. Okay.
But yeah, on the 5-year plan, feel free to look over it. There's really nothing stunning. A lot of these were carryovers of just kind of ongoing capital expenditures from last year's plan, honestly. The solar farm, we would really like to have some firm directive from the board on what they want to see us do there. The prices are becoming attractive. This would be a long-term asset. It would be sitting somewhere glittering for 30 years. And we want to make sure it's well-sited, well-built, all that kind of thing. There's a wide spectrum there between somebody else owns it, we just buy the power, and the BPW owns it and services it. There's a wide continuum in there. Most likely it'd be some combination of that. We'd perhaps advance the funds because we have the cost of capital that's much lower than the private market. We could advance the funding of some sort, and then a developer would operate it, sell us the power. For example, there's ways to kind of blend the two worlds together, so to speak. But the prices are, even in this area with the sunshine the way it sometimes isn't, it's becoming attractive compared to the MISO marketplace. peak hour pricing anyway.
Or if there's something you want to see us do in the future and want to talk about it, feel free to let us know. We can look at costs and get it included in the plan as well. So.
I like that remodeling of the front for security reasons. I was going over that. It looks pretty.
Is the 400,000 enough to get all of that done, at least the front office?
That I don't know right yet.
And then
the firm's working on.
We might want to consider some of the things that Jay can talk about as well.
Mm-hmm. Most of the things, a lot of the things that Jay had mentioned are in that report.
Okay.
And it's just a matter of how we want to prioritize it, and when we want to move forward with different parts or what parts of it. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Abe.
Thank you, Abe. Matt, did you want to talk about
I do.
MDNR inspection report?
Apologize, I forgot to include that with the board packet. But we had an MDNR inspection back in October.
Yep.
I think it was in October, and they came in. Big thing was some testing related to our outfall and the river level at the wastewater plant. We've got roughly 7,000 feet of sewer, or 42-inch sewer main between the plant and the river. When we add our disinfectant, now we're required to remove any of that residual disinfectant down to a limit. When the 2003 permit or 2013 permit expired and we negotiated the new permit, we put in there that our sample location would be down near Ely and Colfax, down 6th Street, that area. There's a manhole adjacent to a lift station that was easily accessed and whatnot. The problem is if the river level is too high, you get the influence of the river backing up and could contaminate the sample. At that time, we got that sample point approved by MDNR with the direction that if the river level was above 11.5 feet, we didn't have to sample. Well, last year, because the river level was up so high for majority of the year, we didn't have to sample, but maybe once or something like that. And so that was one thing that was brought up in their report. And another thing was dilution due to I&I. We're supposed to remove 85% of BOD. Well, if it's basically clean water coming in, there's not much there to remove, and therefore it's hard to meet that removal percentage. So we provided a response letter to them last week sometime, and I will forward you both those letters. So I just wanted to make you aware of them. And also, we're having a pre-treatment inspection at the wastewater plant tomorrow. So it was scheduled today, but due to the weather, they rescheduled it. So.
Okay. Well, before we go into closed session, is there any general discussions?
I have none.
Any comments?
No comments.
Comments from the city attorney?
I'm sorry, I don't have more comments.
All right, let's close the session and go into the closed session.
Pursuant to section 610.021, paragraphs 3 and 12 of the Missouri Sunshine Law, the meeting shall convene in closed session to discuss personnel and contracts, including our attorney, Abe, James, Matt, BJ, Michael, Jay, and Courtney.
You don't have to include James. Since Bruce here. You don't have to.
Spirit.
Yeah, there's
Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to move into closed session.
Do I hear a second?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What's that?
You can have that.
You can have that one, yeah.
I gotta go.
Yeah, I do too.
Bill Fisher.